Welcome to the Dog Psychology Podcast with Todd and Art.
All right, here we are with another episode of the Dog Psychology Podcast with Todd and Art. How you doing, Todd?
What's up, Art?
Not a whole lot. Just ready to.
How many appointments a week are you doing right now?
Right now, I have my schedule blocked for nothing because I brought in 2 dogs that I just want to focus my entire time with. I have a Mexican street dog that I'm working with, and she's really reactive. She's come a long way. She's still the intensity is a lot less. It's still there, but it's not as bad as what it was. So we have some time still to work with her.
Reactive to what?
Dogs. Very social dog. Very,
Right.
very social dog. But just extremely reactive on leash. You know, lived on the street in Mexico. She was kind of like the leader of the pack, from what I understand, when they found her.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'm wondering what happened to the other dogs. I'm sure someone just stepped up. But she's one of those dogs that just doesn't connect with people. And, you know, she has a hard time kind of connecting. And she's just now started giving some eye contact. I mean, shut my notifications off.
You know, this is a good transition because we were going to talk about nature versus nurture. So I think this is it's interesting, a good transition, but I also want to go back to this whole thing when you said you pulled the pack leader, what happened to the pack in regards to a conversation I had with somebody about dog packs chasing giraffes off the edge of a cliff in South Africa, like what they were running into trouble with. So why did you say what happened to the rest of the pack when you took the pack leader?
Well, I'm just curious because they follow a certain, energy around a certain dog that they trust, a certain dog that they feel can lead them into, safe situations. Now, again, this goes back to nurture versus nature, and so I'm pretty sure that somebody's just stepped up and just took over. I saw this documentary over the weekend. Actually, it's on Disney. It's called Elephants, and I don't know if you've seen this. It's amazing. It's an amazing documentary, and they follow a herd of elephants. And when they go from, I forgot where they're at, but they're traveling to a food source that has food and water. When they're there, they get charged and attacked by lions and this whole thing. And one of the elders of the elephants, which is they're 2 females of this herd, one of them passes away. And so the thing is with these elephants, they take the same path and it's handed down to generation to generation. And they follow the exact same path every single time for hundreds and thousands of years.
Isn't that crazy?
So crazy.
Following like some path under the earth, like a magnetic path or something that's underneath the earth.
Yeah, like a guide or something,
Yeah.
They don't do that with a GPS, Google Maps, like they just do it by memory. And then they pass it down. And so one of the elders, she passed away. And so then the other, there was a sister or a relative who was also a female elephant who took over. But they were also saying that there was a newborn that they had, a new elephant with them named Jomo or Joko. And that elephant was eventually going to take over and become, but it was going to be, several years before it got to that point. Right. So when I thought about that, I was like, that someone just takes over. Like in nature, someone they just empty spot. I'll take it over.
Right. Because this guy was talking. He lived in South Africa, and they were talking about they were having issues with this pack of dogs chasing giraffes off the edge of a cliff. And they couldn't figure out what to do. And just in the quick part he was talking, in my mind, I went, well, remove the head. Pull the head. I mean, however that is in that particular case, capture, trap, whatever you need to the dog that's leading that's leading that. And start with that. You know what I mean? Get rid of what was probably motivating all of that to transpire. Because and Caesar's talked about that if you befriend the pack leader, trap the rest of the pack. And they'll just keep bringing you new dogs because you end up as this source of friendship. And and this is what's interesting too, is I think the whole part of understanding the psychology of the dog's leadership mechanism is that they care about you less from the front. So when people are always like, I want my dog to love me the most. Yeah, we'll get in front because they'll love you more because you're more disposable, so to speak, from the back. You're indispensable from the front. Yeah. And that we talked about that, and you had a slightly different. So to me, that actually plays out like in my head as I'm working. And when we started this nature versus nurture conversation, you were talking about a Mexican street dog. Those street dogs are difficult because to me, they've completely lived a natural life. And if you bring them into an environment, right? So when I say the word environment, I mean nurture.
Yeah.
It's just by the word and the aspect. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So once you bring them into our environment, unless your ability to nurture is equally on par with their ability to use their nature, you're going to be ignored. And I had a case where they had rescued a dog off the street in Peru. Same thing, super confident dog, and it came into a house, really confident dog, and they just immediately started to fight. Just immediately, it was just constant fighting, constant. And when the dogs came and stayed here, just the being here removed that forward nature that they had, and they just went to play or relax. I didn't have to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so if your environment can't deal with the natural side, so when we started this conversation, you were like, So take me through your on what you mean about the nature versus nurture, like where you have a varying viewpoint on this.
Well, I don't think it was varying. I think that I hadn't sit and like really thought about. I mean, I do think about it, but and just so everyone knows, before we started recording, Todd and I were just having a discussion about nature versus nurture, and I said, that has come up in conversation. You made a post about it the other day, but I also saw it when I was reading a book, and so it was kind of like fresh in my mind. And the reason why I said I don't know if I want to talk about that, and the reason why I said is because I was more that I wanted to kind of sit and think about things. But what I do know when we talk about nature versus nurture, like we think of like rescue is nurture, right? It is not nature. And so when we talk about dog psychology and the way we view dog psychology is nature. It is how does nature work? And I believe that nature is perfect. Like nature is exactly unfortunately, nature is perfect the way it is. But in nature, there is death. There is bad things that happen as human beings that we see, right? And so sometimes nature says no, and the human says yes.
Well, if I may, define from your point of view, what are some of the characteristics of nature when we're talking about the dog?
Well, are we talking about like?
So I think for us to really to have a conversation that I guess makes sense, let's define what these are. What would be natural characteristics of dog versus nature versus nurture? So what are we going to put in the category of nature? So how are we defining this? In the post, I mentioned drives, right? So prey drive, energy level, pack position, excitement level. The characteristics that the dog is essentially born with, right? That in the absence of a human, which would be environment or nurture, how would these things develop? And so now we have, nature or nurture, which is going to be the human factors, environmental factors. So how do these factors play into or against or with these factors? Now, my point of view is that you need to be more influential to override most natural forces. So, for example, to keep a German Shepherd from wanting to, and I think breed plays into nature, to keep them from running around nipping the kids, you have
hurting the kids.
Right now, I think part of what may be confusing is we try to do as much nature version of our nurturing approach, right? So our approach has more nature in it than most. We're not using clickers and we're not throwing food. We're not creating like a scientific approach. We're communicating silently with the understanding of how pressure works. We're communicating in their way, but we're still nurture, right? So we need to have our nurturing forces completely fulfill and understand how to control essentially the nature forces. That's why we can only bring so many animals into our lives, because we don't know enough about how to control the natural forces of these other animals. So that's what I mean. So for your breakdown of it.
Yeah, but I think, when we look at, because we're, talking about the Mexican street dog as an example, if you look at these dogs who live out in the street, I mean, they actually, they're pretty healthy. They're moving around. They're searching for their food. They're using their nose quite a bit. Sometimes they are nervous of people. They kind of stay away, almost like we saw that coyote, which we probably should post that video. We saw the coyote, but how the tail was down. But if you were to like remove the human and they depended on themselves.
Hold on, I'll bring it up. I'm Jamie now. Jamie, can you bring up the coyote video?
Yeah, I have it here too.
Do?
So, and we'll just share it here when Adam edits this video, we can show you.
You want me to just hold it up to the screen?
You can do that too.
Yeah.
So this is a video we had at TCW. It's across the street, the parking lot across the street. I saw it when we pulled out of our parking lot of our hotel. And I was like, Todd, look, there's a coyote over there. And we kind of just followed it. But look, like
Caesar.
I know Caesar. That was funny. That was really funny. But so just like the way it moves, it's flighty, keeping distance. Very. It doesn't trust us, obviously, but obviously respects us. And it's just all about survival, right? And by the way, that when we bring in nurture, a lot of the behaviors that we see is survival.
What do you mean?
Well, so like if you get a dog that is, let's say we pulled off the street and we immediately bring them home and we kind of stick them in a crate, and they start becoming anxious right away. Their survival, or even trying to get out, like that is a survival mechanism to get out of this new place, right?
Oh, absolutely, right. It's basically what trapped flight. So because they didn't go into acceptance, and that's the thing with those street dogs. When people take them off the streets, they think by putting them in the house they're benefiting them, but the dog doesn't accept going in the house.
Right.
So then
that's
everything
nurture
is in the house for those. And there we're bringing in saying, hey, we're going to nurture this, but we're not honoring nature.
Yeah. And I think, you mentioned this in a post about like when you get a new dog, like, take it for a walk and then, bring it in. I remember the first time, when I first got my dog in 2006 or 5, whatever it was, my dog Emma, this time out, Caesar was on TV, and I remember he talked about like, how the walk was important. So I just, for whatever reason, I just remembered that, like, oh, let's take a dog for a walk. So the first thing I did when I got home, I took a walk around the neighborhood. And, I just walked around the neighborhood. I was like, this is going to be your new home. And I even went to like each room, like, this is my room. And like, looking back, it's kind of silly, but it was kind of like what I did, I was like, this is where your crate's going to be, which is going to be my bedroom. And this is going to be, I had this 3-bedroom house. I was living by myself. Like, this is the office. This is the kitchen.
Like the Taliban?
No, this is way before that. Actually, at that time I had I was into bicycles, and so had like a handlebar mustache.
Fuck.
I have a picture of that too, by the way. I'll send it to you.
That street dog energy is it's tricky because of all that natural forces. So everything is difficult. So let's go back to the dog you have on with you. So where do you think you've really made progress, and where do you think you have, work to do?
So this is where a pack really comes into play, because she definitely wants to be with the pack, but she associates the walk when she's by herself. She associates the walk with, if I see a dog, I react to it. And again, it's just because she actually wants to be, she's a social animal. She wants to be with that, her own species. And so what I've been doing is I've been taking her on the pack walks with the dogs, which has really allowed her to say, I'm giving her what she wants.
Yeah.
Without having the reaction, right? She wants to be part of the pack. She wants to, I think Lynn would call this social pressure. Like she's socially.
What does she do when she's with the dog, when she's with the pack?
She's fine.
She doesn't do no reaction.
No. I mean, actually, I don't really know that because we haven't seen any, but she looks and feels different. Her body language is a lot different. Like if we're on a walk by herself, her tail's up higher. When she's in the pack, she's more relaxed. So my plan of action is do more of that, more of the pack walks. So that becomes the norm. Then I start taking out dogs. So I have 7 dogs, but we walk about 4 at a time. So so there's her and 4 others, so it's 5. And so we walk in all together. And the other thing is I take my least reactive dogs with me, because Buddha is like, he gets a little whiny and I don't want her to be exposed to that stuff. So I take the dogs, which is Nala, Honey.
What do you think she would do? Sorry, what do you think she would do if one of the other dogs blew up? Do you think she would go with that dog, or do you think she'd join in with the dog and blow up towards him?
I don't want to find out.
Right?
I just don't want to experience it. I don't want to chance it, because if I can have any opportunity to, what I feel, to have her experience or be around the things that I want her to be, I don't want her to be around that just yet.
Right.
And so as we walk together and all the dogs, then my plan of action is to start taking one dog out. So then we go, if there's only 4 of us, take another dog out, it's 3 of us, until she's by herself.
Who are
It's
you going
almost
to
like
leave her with? Are you going to leave her with a soft dog or a confident dog?
100% a soft dog.
Okay.
Soft dog. And because she's a little confident herself, but it kind of balances the pack out a little bit. If my role is to guide them and lead them and do these other things, and she is a confident dog, but she's more of a happy-go-lucky dog. But then I get the soft dog to kind of complete the pack in a way, you know. So you get the front, and the middle, and the back.
Mm-hmm. How does she respond to you?
She still gets tense. And another thing that I want to point out is that, like I said, she's a very social dog, and so she's one of those dogs that starts to get worked up in play. Mm-hmm. And so I start to slow her down even in those situations, because just like I always talk about, I think we talked about this in the last episode, about you don't always need another dog on a leash to create the reactivity. That is reactivity in your backyard, right? And so when she's off leash. So I've learned to apply some psychological pressure on her to slow her down. So she goes, oh, I got to slow down now? Yep, just go and slow down. So everybody can slow down right now. So I do that because these are moments, these little micro events that I'm creating a moment in time for her to understand that in situations where she's starting to get elevated, that I can always dial it down. So when I take her on a walk and she happens to get a little reactive, I can always dial it down in those situations as well. Makes sense?
So by practicing in less intensity,
correct.
We're back to that, right? The same concept is, I think we all do the same thing and explain it different ways. I had a student the last 3 days, I'm not asking dogs to like other dogs. I'm basically saying that the whole category of fight doesn't exist. No whining, no barking, no jumping, no forward brain that is not regulated by me. And so it's not about it doesn't matter. And you basically just erase an entire category. You can't do it to me, to the others. So now what's left? Flight. I'm going to block that too. So now you have ignoring, you have avoidance, and then acceptance. And it seems, that was always the way even Lynn would explain it and shape it. And then, if the dog was off, I put the dog away on the other side of a fence, and then it's drive for that social acceptance, that instinctive need to be with other dogs takes over. And you're kind of never making them like something, just not letting them fight it or run away from it, and massage the middle part. And that excitement's a bitch. That type of excitement in those dogs can be so difficult because they can shift so fast. Yeah. They're so quick and agile and street savvy. I got a dog in today, exact opposite. 6-month-old Chesapeake Bay Retriever. More submissive, peeing a little bit, a little more anxiety, a little more nervous, but real easy to gain respect. It's just kind of working it through. It's 6 months old, and best it feels like is that it's just been really underexposed. Like we did the first walk and everything, it was trying to figure it out. And so real easy to get it going out of that. But, the exact opposite dog that you're talking about there. Yeah. The other thing about the nature versus nurture, this is what we were talking about with Caesar, is how the masculine feminine plays it. So you hear the whining. Mm-hmm. I'm going to have to stop. So I've done a bunch of, we had to do a little crate introduction, all these little slow, simple, but very important introductions to things. The first time before we walk out the door, the dog's laying down, and not me asking it to, just it having to figure out that we don't move until you do. Yeah. But now I might have to get up and, well, I ignore a lot of this at the beginning. It's not necessary. I don't have to tell you. It's not necessary to deal with it. Like I can ignore a lot. Yeah. But I've already kind of caught the pattern I can't ignore. Yeah. You know what I mean? There's a certain sound they'll make that you're like, oh, that one we're gonna have to address. Well,
it'll change because it'll go like, and then they go from that fast high squeaking sound, and boom, that's rehab. Like that.
So, and I was explaining too with barking. I'm like, you can hear it. There'll be like a boop,
Right. And you just let them know, okay, whatever, just get it out.
Yeah, that was nothing, but it's the that there's a certain elevation in ones, and you're like, let's see.
And it's like they almost do Morse code, like,
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, we got to intervene.
Talk about showing videos. A student sent me a video, and they wanted me to break it down. And this is where the people may or may not understand why ignoring is so powerful. And if you're not going to ignore, why you got to correct it. Is he would go, no.
And by the way, that yawn they just did right there is a good sign.
Yeah, just real good. Yeah. And the dog would lunge forward, and then he would go, no. And the dog would lunge forward. And he didn't realize, and I had to show it to him in the video. I go, dude, do you see that you're actually triggering the behavior you're trying to control? To where he would make the sound that meant, hey, I don't want you to do it. And the dog would lunge forward. So in this barking behavior, a lot of my clients will be like, no, no, no. They don't see that they're the trigger. They're the match. They're not the extinguisher.
Yeah.
And that habit gets linked together really quick and easy to
obviously
miss.
I can't see the dog, but I heard that little, and that's like, okay, that's like getting it out. So, that's actually in real time what just happened, but I was, you can hear it, and then we heard it where it was escalating, but then he or she was able to like regulate itself and then went, and I was like, oh, I heard it. There you go, right there.
Exactly. And so when this already today, what time is it here? It's 2:00 my time. So the dog was dropped off about 8:30, right to a walk. So I had a student here, and this was really cool for her because she works in rescue. So she got to see what I do when a dog is dropped off, like kind of real time, if you want to call it. So we went for a walk. I've got the video of it. I go, this is when I first touched the dog. This is what I'm teaching the dog first. It's how to walk with me. And so we go for a walk, and very quickly the dog falls into follow, which is perfect. Falls right into follow. So then we walk for quite some time. Come home, wait, do a crate introduction because I have to feed the dogs. And I'm trying to figure out how am I going to introduce this dog to my dogs. And for some reason, I don't even know why, I said I'm going to do it from the crate because I knew this dog was nervous, and I didn't just want it to have the dogs come. I just wanted for some reason to do it this way. So we did a crate introduction. Then I brought the dogs in. I did it one at a time so that they actually could smell through the crate, and you could see the dog went to the back of the crate. So, but then it came out and it went to the front of it, fed him. Or no, excuse me, didn't feed them. I fed my dogs. And then while my dogs were resting after feeding, brought it back out, did a door introduction of how when we go through the door, you have to lay down. Like I'm expecting you top-notch relaxed. And then we did another walk. And then came back in and anchored the dog to the door. And it paced around a little bit, but then it laid down. And when it laid down and relaxed, I sent a video to its mom. And its mom's like, oh my God, you're a miracle worker. Which means that the bar set real low because just the dog being calm, I guess, was surprising to them. And then we took it back out for another walk. And then after that walk, we did the crate introduction again. So to me, a crate's like a crib. It's more a break for me. But and the dog learning to self-regulate, if you want to call it that, everybody likes terms. Self-regulate while they're in the crate's huge. And we just heard that.
Yeah.
So that's what's good about this. So now when I'm done with you, I'll probably do another walk.
Done with you.
I'm done with you, fucker. I'll do another walk. And it's that kind of like wash, rinse, repeat cycle. Because this dog really needs a lot of exercise. I can feel that. And it needs a lot of like immediate stability. Like a simple life. Like I'm going to have you anchored. I'm going to have you crated. We're going to be in the yard. We're going to be walking. We're going to be playing. And then we're going to be back to one of these stations. And I feel for me, because it also, it fits my personality and my lifestyle. I think that can't be understated too. When you're trying to help a dog, everybody's trying to be perfect. Who is? You know what I mean? And you got to know when you are. I've been explaining to people that I'm really good in the morning. I get all my exercise and real physical labor with the dog done in the morning. By midday, it's kind of more mild. And if I'm doing anything in the evening time, it's usually on a treadmill. I'm not doing it. I don't have the energy to.
Yeah.
You said you brought in 2 dogs. What's the other dog?
The dog is so I just got this dog this morning. It is a Bernedoodle.
I love those, dude. I fucking love those things.
They're fun. They're very happy-go-lucky for the most part. This dog is that. And I actually did a consultation with them initially. And I had met with them. And this was just a dog that was just also needs a walk. Like also definitely needs a walk.
How old is it?
It's young. It's less than a year old.
Is it big?
Yeah, he's big. He's like a big teddy bear. And yeah, when I did a consultation with him, he was one of those that would just like like mouthing the leash quite a bit. One of the worst I've ever seen, actually. Just like super mouthy. And usually, like what I'll do is I don't like pull the leash out. I drop it, but I grab the inside so there's no pressure like coming out of the mouth. But I have enough. Or even I'll grab the collar so they just kind of like spit it out and I'll grab it.
Mhm.
This dog, I could not for the life of me. And I told the owners like, I've never seen a dog like this committed on just putting this leash in his mouth. Like
how many times did you shift your strategies through that?
Several times. And I was like, well, that's not going to work. And then usually if I keep my hand like kind of, I can set my hand close to kind of block it from. No, this dog was just like finding ways.
Would he climb up the leash to you? Like
he was always finding ways to get the leash in his mouth. He found ways that I've never seen before. And I was like, all right, and I said, this will be fun, but I'll get it. Don't worry. Like I wasn't too concerned about it.
He wouldn't grab your hand.
He wouldn't really mouth my hand.
Okay.
It was more so like it's that playfulness. Like it's not that. And I knew there was a lot of pent up energy. So I just had a good feeling that this dog just needed to get it out, go on a walk and just get it out. And then when I picked it up today, this was a couple months ago when I met the dog, picked it up today, and the dog's actually a lot more chill today. But then I started walking outside, and all of a sudden it just went to avoidance from my car. I was like, nope, I don't want to go in. And it had a martingale collar on, and I took a car that I normally don't drive and didn't have any slip leads in there. So I was like, well, I don't want to lose this dog. So I'm just picking it up. What I normally don't like to do, I like to work it through. And I started to work it through, but it started to back out. I was like, yeah, I don't want to lose this dog on the first day. So I was like, I'm going to go ahead and just pick it up. Just play it safe. I put it back. And so we brought it home, and then, yeah, it's going to be a fun dog. It's just,
is it worth explaining why that first time picking it up is so bad?
Well, cause I don't want it to be avoidant of the, but also I had to pick my battle, right? Meaning, can I work on this later? Yes, I can. Is it worth me working through this 4 feet of thing and losing the dog? I was like, I don't want to take a chance losing a dog. So in my 12 years of working with dogs, I have never lost a dog. And
by lost, you mean not able to retrieve and get back to an owner? Or a dog that's just simply gotten off your property? Got off.
I mean, that too. Like I have like
you're kidding me. You've never had a dog get off your property? Oh, dude, I got 2 funny stories on this one. Yeah, dude. So when I first moved into this house, I think it was like 2010, 2011, we got settled in and I started taking in a bunch of dogs. I took in these 2 dogs from one family. One was a big Dogo Argentine, and another one was like almost like a street dog that you described. And they were aggressive to people, and they had said to kids, but we knew people. And so I forget they were in the yard, and I had, I don't know, gone and done something, not left like driven away, but gone and done something. And then I looked and I saw that the gate was open. I went, oh shit. And they weren't in the yard. And I walk out in the street and I look down and they were at the bus stop with the kids.
Oh my God.
Down at the end of the street. Yeah. Totally loving it, by the way. Totally cool. Just and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So I mean, that's why I had to roll in and just take them out of there like they belong. But that was one. And then, oh shit, there's another one. This one was a dog. I think it was Thunder or something like that. And it got out, but I saw it move, and I went to get it, and it went straight down a street, turned left down another street, kept going. It was in full flight, kept going. And the yard that it decided to run into just happened to be fully fenced, just completely around it, fully fenced, so I could go in and get it. So I didn't lose either of those dogs. And then I think there was a dog that got out from fireworks one time, but it's a dog that came back. I've never lost a dog. Like, that's why I asked, I mean retrieve a dog? I've had a couple dogs get out, but I've never lost a dog. And anyway, just losing them or like a dog die.
Yeah.
That
actually, now we're talking about it. Now it was at my place, but it wasn't me that did it. It was one of the employees had I guess left the side gate open. This was a flighty dog too.
Right.
It was a flighty dog and a happy-go-lucky dog. And in my old house, and someone left the side gate open, and then they had gone to the back, taking the leashes off, and the dog just kind of like trotted over there, and just boop, they were gone. And they weren't gone for very long, but we were able to get the dogs. But now I think about it,
You know, some dogs can climb a fence remarkably easy, especially if they're triggered by flight. I mean, they can just scale a. You know, I have a wood fence, and when it's because of a couple of situations, I had it built to where the flat side is in. You know, so a dog doesn't have the opportunity to put their feet on the beam that goes across the center of it and scale it. It's a lot harder to scale a smooth 6-foot fence. But yeah, that's when dogs escape, that's brutal. That's why you got to be really, really on point with your environment and with what you got. I mean, I obviously one is too many, but it's going to happen. You just got to, go out and do your best to get them back. Got lucky. We started to say something about the nature versus nurture, and we were talking about energies, the masculine energy and the feminine energy. We talked about that with Caesar. I got a couple of comments on it too. I think people may be more receptive than I think they are. In my mind, it's like it's everybody's like, no, that's not true. Why is feminine the soft end? It's like, fuck off for a second. We're trying to just say we're trying to describe an animalistic feeling that we all need to be both, right, on some level. But which one do you need? And masculine and feminine are good descriptive energies, and what Caesar described is actually quite common for us, is where you walk in and the woman is using a lot of masculine energy to interact with the family, but feminine energy, to interact with the dog. Mm-hmm. And I've always recognized that, and early on, you could see that the women that lived with all men had a much harder time of some of the ability to discipline the dog, because the dog was like a source of something for them, a source of whatever it was, emotional fulfillment, support. They could really use the feminine energy, so to speak, on the dog. What do you think about that?
So I want to take it back. I had shown Caesar a video of this woman in Germany who has like a pack of 60 dogs. And this was my first time hearing Caesar say this, using the term masculine, feminine, because I had a distorted view of what that actually was, right? And so, because I didn't really know, but from what you're...
How so? What do you distorted in what way?
I think what people have, for example, there's a term out there called toxic masculinity, right? And I believe that true masculinity of what masculine energy is not toxic. It's just masculine. I think what people confuse is that they see masculine as abusive. They see, and it's that meaning of being masculine or feminine has changed over the years. And I think when you look at it in its natural sense, it's been around for thousands of years, yin and yang, right? That's exactly what it is. It's a balance. We obviously need both.
Can I add one? Can I add something?
Of course, yeah.
Do you ever hear anybody describe their dog as being afraid of women?
Yes. It's rare, but
normally if a dog's afraid of women, people will say it's afraid of people. How often do we hear dogs are afraid of men?
All the time.
Okay, so these are the same people that may argue the definition of masculine versus feminine, but aren't they saying that there is an energy that my dog is more uncomfortable with, and it seems to be generated towards the male side, right?
Right.
So how would they define those characteristics? What do they think the dog is afraid of? Patriarchy? I mean, seriously, it's an energy. I know plenty of masculine females and feminine males, right? And so it's not about trying to define a political term to me,
right? That's what it's become.
And human. We're in the animal state. I'm not in the political state or the cultural state. I am in the animal state when describing it. So I feel like I speak freely. Now, it might make some people uncomfortable. And that's what when Caesar first started teaching it, that's what I stood in the back and looked for. And it did on not the first go around, but the second go around, I noticed more people brought, and the question is always this side. So I was talking about it with the student. If I try to practice feminine energy, it's not that I can't, I do it. I have a daughter, but it's obvious I'm trying to practice it. I'm trying to manufacture it in some way, right? You'll be able to tell. And that a woman watching me is going to go, look, he's trying to be feminine. Look at him doing his best to be soft for his daughter. And so that can be talked about. But if we say, oh man, it looks like the woman is trying to be masculine, it immediately becomes, oh, so you're saying she can't be confident? No. We're trying to say, hey, there's this balancing act. One side naturally generates an energy here easier. One side naturally generates an energy here easier. If we want to get into the biology and all that, you can. And the dog is going to respond to this distinctly different. I mean, distinctly different. What is it that Caesar said about that woman?
The first thing he goes, is she masculine? That's the first thing he said.
He's controlling 60 dogs.
Yeah, and I said, it kind of caught me off guard, right? I'm like, and I just kind of sat there and I go, yeah, she is. He goes, he said something like, in order to have that many dogs, you have to have masculine energy with that many. That
find a masculine trait. One masculine trait.
Order.
Order.
That's not really a trait. This is the thing. This is where it gets tricky because, right. Like you said, it's someone that's, he talks about calm, confident, love, joy, right? And you just said right now, you have a hard time practice being feminine. I have no problems practicing feminine energy. I have no problems practicing masculine energy, right? Doing masculine things. And Caesar, what does Caesar say? He's like, Todd, you need to practice more love, joy, and he's saying that because he sees that you only practice one. And what does Caesar say? Fuck yeah, I practice feminine energy. That's
the dancing. That's his ability to match people's dancing on stage is phenomenal. That rhythm and love that comes off of him, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. But going back to what I was saying, it being toxic. There's two things I'll talk about. People and this is on both sides, because people will say or feel or think that feminine is weak, and it is not weak. It is strong in its own way. It's beautiful in its own way. And I think that we have, and I think we had the discussion about this after we did the podcast, because there was, it wasn't what you said. It was how you perceived you thought you said, right? And you're like, oh man, maybe the way that could be perceived in a different way. And you were kind of concerned about that. And I was like, I could see what people are going to hear what they're going to want to hear. And that's not what you meant. And and it's not that you were saying that a feminine energy is weak, because it is not. And that's something I learned from Caesar, because he said, if you look at a feminine energy could really help those sensitive back of the pack dogs, right? You do need both. And I'll tell you, when I work with the higher energy, more forward dogs, I have to practice being more masculine. And when I'm with these sensitive dogs, I have to be more soft and sensitive and all these things. So I have to be both. And so it's not that I'm one or the other.
That street dog you have to be a perfection balance of both.
100%. That's what I was about to say, balance. Because you have to, it's not too far forward. You don't want to shut the dog down. You don't want to be too soft, where you undercompensate. Lynn would call that Goldilocks. You want to Goldilocks that shit. You want to give too much, you don't give too little, you want to give just right. And so that is where, let's talk about the Frenchie that you were telling me about, right? I don't know where that dog is, but you were saying that maybe it needed a little softer energy.
Well, because it was interesting. It had such a masculine forward energy, but it responded so well to more of a softer feminine approach.
Yeah. Not weaker approach, softer.
Yeah, because that's the thing, is that for me, defining, I guess you could say, the protect direct, the ability and the desire. I think this is one of the separating factors so here's where it's important for us. We could break it down as much as we want to make sure the definitions are perfect and clear and everybody's sensibilities are okay and nobody's feelings are hurt. But this is, to me, what it comes down to and why it's important to understand, at least from the standpoint of when you practice the masculine energy. The difference between the masculine and the feminine energy is the masculine energy must follow through. And what I mean by follow through is that masculine energy, the protection side, steps forward. And when you get into certain interactions with dogs, the desire to be in control like you might be in the human world, which may make you feel like you have a masculine side because you control humans through whatever the boss side of you, may give you the perception that you are masculine. But if you use that masculine energy in front of a dog who's actually animalistically acting masculine to you, and you back down because you don't really have the follow through of the full masculine energy, that's what happens. That's where it separates everything. So there is a primal way into which masculine energy is used in the wild. And in my opinion, it's the protection follow through side. Mm-hmm. So a mother bear is using masculine energy when she moves forward to defend her cubs, but it's driven by a feminine maternal drive.
Right.
Right. So that's the balance of it. And who's to say there's a stronger energy than a mother bear protecting her cubs? We say it's strong because she's using at that point the most forward masculine side of herself that she could generate, but it's being generated out of the feminine. And to me, it only matters because I get a lot of clients who use masculine energy on the dog, and I can see the dog's like, please. The dog's like, I can touch you and follow through with you, but you can't touch me and follow through with me. And to me, that's where it's important.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to the softer energies, it's only beneficial because using a better energy will move the dog into a trusting mindset. But it's only really to me that in the reference of gaining respect. And I think when Caesar broke that down, those are the women that are getting the most disrespected by their dogs. The ones that practice masculine energy with their families and feminine energy with the dog. I mean, think of how many, like, it's almost like assaulting. The owners can get like, ding, 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 ding. You know, the dogs are almost assaulting the owners because they've played control, but they haven't actually practiced using that energy, like really using it. Am I making sense?
Yeah. Okay. And I think also that it's important to understand that, like, even, I'm not, when we talk about these things, it's become very political, but also, it's changed, and like all words, a lot of stuff has changed. Words have changed meaning in a short amount of time, right? And so
it's almost like they haven't changed meaning. It's that they've gained emotion. So the meaning now is always emotional.
Yeah.
And I've long thought dogs could kind of save certain parts of society, because this is the part that I talked about that you said I was sensitive with is, in my opinion, in society now, the back of the packs, the softer energies, are making decisions. And so what's the difference when I just said what I believe masculine energy is it moves forward and follows through. So it's going to make harder choices in a sense. It's going to say, all right, we're going to move through this. Whereas the softer energies do what? Move away.
Avoid, yeah.
Yeah, they avoid, right? So now you have people in positions of power that are more wired to move away, but they're in power. So they're in these front positions, but their brains are like, no, we can't face that. Let's move away. That's why we're in this word police situation we're talking about right now. Yeah. Because people's feelings are so hurt by things emotionally. They want to move away, but they're saying they're in control. And so we're stuck in this paradigm of where do we go? What do we do? And that to me is the difference, is that if you will move forward through hard things, and that's the book you started this whole conversation with, is teaching puppies to move forward through hard things, you're moving forward. And that is the benefit of society, is we need the front to move forward through hard things so the back can come with them. But now we have the back and the front, asking the fronts to move to the back. And they're going, wait a second, you want to move away from everything. So everything starts to deteriorate because you're not progressing.
And that goes back to nature versus nurture also.
Absolutely. Completely, because we're still a social being, just like dogs. And so as moving away gets nurtured more and more, you live in an avoidant world, which is anxious. How many people I have people that I know in my family that can't move forward. They're 24-year-old and they're avoidant. And they're anxious because their brains are incapable of moving forward through hard things. And so it's not about sexes. We can remove the sex from this completely. It's just, we have to define that these energies are both needed. They complement each other. But when they're misplaced, everything's fucked. And we can't pretend that when they're misplaced, they're the same. They're not. They're different energies. And that's the problem, is in society now, we want to pretend that everything's the same. Fuck. Masculine does certain things better than feminine. Feminine does certain things better than masculine. So why don't we put them in the right roles, as opposed to pretending that this is the best role for them and going forward? So that's where this conversation gets sensitive.
Yeah. And that, here I'm like studying my words because I also want to be careful with what I say, you know, because it could be perceived in so many bad ways. But you know, when I think of like a perfect balance of masculine and feminine, I think of one person, Colleen. Like Colleen,
Yes.
I mean, she's the perfect Colleen Steckloff, Aguilera,
So
LA
is
Canines.
so is Caesar, and they're a very similar. In my opinion, they have a very similar.
Yeah.
Keep
I mean,
going,
Colleen is like very feminine. She's an amazing mother. She's one of my mentors, my first mentor. She's beautiful. She's very feminine. She likes to dance. She's very playful, very happy-go-lucky, middle child. But when she's working with dogs, she's working with difficult dogs, she knows how to bring that masculine out to work with the dogs.
So, did you ever get a chance to read reviews? So at the end of these interviews, there used to be reviews of Colleen and I, and we got to read them. She was so intimidating to the women that were there. Over and over and over again, that would be the one thing that you would get, is that she was so intimidating to them. Which, when you hear any of us describe her, all we describe is her feminine side and how unbelievably, to me, balanced she was. I never saw her get frustrated. I never saw her get upset. Nope. The way that she tolerated you idiots in the room was phenomenal to me, and still kept going like nothing was out of place.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I was like, nope, out. I want the whole room to myself. And she'd have 3 of you morons on the floor just sleeping there. And it never bothered her. She was able to be everything, and so impressively that's a good example of it being in the right way.
Yeah, I love her.
Well, I think Caesar's that. And that's what I've told people for years and years. The most impressive thing for me about Caesar is that he is a perfect balance of calmness, confidence, love, and joy all at the same time. And he knows which one he needs to use the most in this particular moment to get the best result. And so the funny thing that he gets a lot of flack for, the way he is with dogs, to me is just, it's really hilarious, because his greatest gift is that I've never once seen him frustrated. I have only seen calmness, confidence, love, joy, all working simultaneously. One happens to rise at one moment, one rises at the next. And the way the dogs respond to him is pretty magical, when you're able to balance all 4 of those things out at one time.
Yes. And at the same time, there's times when even him at his feminine is too much for those sensitive dogs.
Because at his core, I think he's creating a practice behind it. I mean, he's a really confident guy when it comes to the dog. Like, that confidence side, it can't be. Yeah. You can make him insecure, start talking accounting with him. But when it comes to the dogs, you only get that projection. But it's just that he is a truly loving soul. You can see it in the way he deals with everything. Yeah. He's just got a way about him. I think everybody else has to honor that they are really good at being a couple of things, and you have to create characters for other things. I remember Lynn was always talking about, Oprah was big when I was working with Lynn. It was attitude of gratitude. And so that's what I've always stuck with me, is that I get lots of please and thank yous, lots of generating my version of love, which is, that's, I'm going to be, and the other one's like my love language, my human love language is active service and quality time. So in reality, I'm really good with giving dogs what they want, because one of my love languages is active service. So I feel like I'm loving on you by walking you, by taking you to the beach, doing things for you. So I think that works out well. But from a standpoint of loving, like emoting energy, that type of, where there's that inviting energy where, nobody thinks hugs when they see me, like that type of energy, I really have to generate. I can be very compassionate, very empathetic. I really can. Even the student here, I've helped her for a while. I helped her with the passing of a dog, and she made, when we talk about it, we're talking about it now. She mentioned this just now, that she was surprised how compassionate I was in helping her. Well, I will say this. You remember at this past TCW, you knew I was off one of the days, and you're like, hey, you okay, man? I'm like, yeah, I'm all right. But then I shared with you, no, I wasn't okay. It's because we had that dog that had a spinal injury or whatever it was when they showed up for TCW.
and the dog collapsed, and I felt really bad for the woman.
That's right.
And I was there right there, and I got to experience that with her. And I was trying to keep her calm. I was like, hey, don't worry, we'll figure out what's going on. And luckily we had a vet that was there, and she was like, yeah, I would just, she kind of said, obviously probably get him to a vet. And so we made that happen and things like that right away. But that really threw me off that whole day, because I felt really bad for her, like to see her dog, like, and she just walked in. She just walked in.
Yeah,
She walks up the hill, and she's like, hey, Art, I'm gonna put my stuff in. And he like yelped, and then he just like fell over, and he had some back issue. And she thinks that it happened when he got out of the car, and the vet thinks it was, happened because, being so, he was, had like a seatbelt, and he couldn't really move in the car.
Yeah.
And so I think he just got like a little bit, like his back maybe got stressed out a little bit.
Yeah.
And then when he jumped out,
like what could happen with
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. And so, he was just like in a lot of pain. And they gave him some pain meds, and he healed, and some anti-inflammatory, and he just healed right up. Because towards the last day, because she didn't bring him anymore. We said, hey, probably not a good idea to bring him. And so the last day when she was leaving, I saw her, and he was all happy and lucky. And I was like, oh, there's the tank that we've been missing this entire time. But the point is that you knew that I was off. You were compassionate. Hey, man, are you okay? Like, you were caring enough you were genuinely caring about, are you okay? And you didn't know that it happened. I don't think you knew that. I mean, you did know that it happened, but you didn't know that I had gone through that experience of seeing the whole thing happen. And it did. I tried to push it away, but it was still kind of affecting me. And by the way, someone else asked me, "Are you okay?"
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I guess it shows.
Yeah, there was something about it, and well, it's good that. Well, that's one of the things about being up there too, that we pretty much have each other's back. The one question I didn't get to ask Caesar, and it's talking about, do you think you felt that way because you took on all of the stress of the situation? I mean, why? Because the question I didn't get to ask Caesar is, one time I watched him get bit by a really nervous dog, and it bit him and went like that in class. It happened in the tent. And after all the students left, he was walking through the tent burning sage. And he was talking about how his body absorbs the toxicity of the bite, and how when that happens, basically you're getting injected with all of the toxicity and nervousness. I personally, when dealing with really, really anxious, especially like an anxious reactive dog, may end up with a bad headache. I've even kind of gotten nauseous almost. I have gotten sick once after a really bad case. Do you think you had taken on energy almost in that capacity, or do you just think it kind of threw you off and you had a hard time getting back?
Totally absorbed it. And, going back to TCW, I remember there was a student that I had several years ago, and Colleen was still here. And the student had shared with me something so personal that I could not even imagine a human being going through what she had gone through. And I remember just listening. I was like, wow. And I just remember what she'd shared, and I was like, okay, well, thanks for letting me know. And we had a conversation about it. And then she went back in the tent. I had to go to the agility and lay down, and I was so nauseous. Wow. Really, really affected me. I had to go lay down. It was really, really bad. And so I'm an empath. Like that stuff kind of affects me, and it's weird because
we all claim to be empaths, by the way. I say the same thing. So either it's just over time that we get used to opening up enough that happens, or it's what makes us be able to do this. Like, I think it's a bonus and it's a curse all at the same time to be that sensitive to energy.
Yeah. And I am very sensitive to a lot of things that people share. If people very, very safe around me, and they share a lot of stuff with me.
Right?
And so I get to hear a lot of things. And here's the thing, like, I used to be a firefighter, so you get to see a lot of things, and unfortunately what they teach in the fire department, they teach you how to compartmentalize things. And that is not a good thing either. But at the same time, I don't know if I'm not sure if you knew this about me, Todd. But before I started working with dogs, I used to work at a tissue bank.
Yeah, you've told me this, where you, where you retrieve tissue off of dead bodies.
Correct. And I would get skin from donors, and we would donate the skin to victims that were in fires. And basically, if you don't have any skin, you're exposed to bacteria, and so they use the skin as a wrap. But not only that,
didn't you get in trouble for cuddling up with one of them?
No. Oh. It's it's very respectful. Like you have to be very respectful, obviously. And you also we would also get some tendons. We would get the sartorius, which is a muscle. We would also get, I forgot one of the veins we would get, but we'd also get the femur. And we would also, we would literally cut from the hip all the way down to like the ankle, and we would pull some tendons out. And it was an interesting job, but you really have to learn how to look at you're helping someone else out.
Right.
Like you are literally saving someone else's life by a choice that someone said, I'm going to donate my working body parts to someone else. And so,
do they teach you that? Do they teach you how to put your focus in the positive of the side of that?
So that in itself was good training because, you're basically seeing people but you have to look at the positive side of things in the sense of like you're saving someone else's life, right? And so, and just so you know, like when I went you have to go to like a working interview.
Where'd you go, buddy?
I'm still here. Can you see me?
Oh, there you go. All right.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
When I went you have to go to a working interview. They want to see if you can stomach it. I thought I was going to pass out the first time. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, and I was just like, okay, I got to figure this out. And I was broke. I had no money. And so this was a really good opportunity for me to get some money.
Did it pay well?
Yeah, it paid really well.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, what's more important, me being hungry or me having about to pass out? And I had to figure out a way real quick to not pass out. And I made it through. And I remember I got in, I was like, oh man, that was rough. And then, so you never forget the first person you see, never forget that face. You also will never, ever forget the first child you see. Mm. And that was a hard one. That was, but at the same time, that, because it's a child, and how he passed was, also tragic, which I don't want to talk about, but, it's just one of those things that that this tragedy is going to help someone else out. And so, it's just one of those crazy things that I've done before working with dogs that, I don't know if it's helped me or hurt me, in certain things. I definitely am very compassionate towards people and animals and things like that. So I don't know.
Well, I think that's, you said you're an empath, and, I've kept myself kind of safe from things, and so I've where you've opened up to some of it, and that the good and the bad is that you're choosing to be open. The bad is that how does it affect you?
I think that's a really important thing, is that I know when it's affecting me. I know when to step back, because as you know, a lot of our clients are women, and so a lot of things, when I had my first round of my mentorship, it was all women, and I'm there to help out. But what was happening is that they a lot of them were sharing a lot of experiences they were having, and I told my wife this. I was like, that they were going back to masculine and feminine, right? They were relying on me to be a masculine role within their life in a weird way. And I told my wife, I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can do this role, because my masculine energy is for you, and not that we were, doing like things, but like they were sharing things with me.
Let me ask you this. Would it have been different if it was a young man or a man looking for that same role from you, like a father figure?
That's a really good question. And no, it wouldn't be. I just had a conversation. So I'm in a group with other fathers, and we talk about stuff, and I felt that was something that was missing in my life, like connecting with other fathers. And so I'm in a group that has other fathers. And so one of the things that we were talking about in our call this morning was one of the gentlemen has a cousin who has a son that has a father, but is very verbally abusive to him, calls him fat and you're lazy and all this stuff. And so the discussion was, how can this guy be a role model, a masculine role model in this child's life? And so I don't know, maybe it would be different. And I guess it would depend on the situation, because at the same time, I want to reserve this for my children as well. I don't know. I don't know how I would take that. I mean, because that opportunity has come up. I had a neighbor's kids who their father was killed in a car accident, and there was 3 young kids. And right before we moved out of our house, this kid threw a freaking rock through our window. Troubled kid. He's going to be in a lot of trouble, like growing up, because he doesn't have that
Right.
masculine role model.
You started talking about elephants at the very beginning. Do you know the other side of how they rehabilitate the male elephants is they put a huge, stable bull male elephant in these what are they called? Where they would keep all the elephants. And that settles them down. Because in the absence of a strong male role model, the young male elephants turn to total dick bags. And so that's how they regulate it. That's using nature, right? Yeah. That's using nature the right way.
Yeah.
You were saying?
No, I just don't want to say anything that's going to come across as, you know.
Well, no, the reason I asked is, I mean, to me, I've actually gotten, I don't want to say used to this, but, you know, let's say talk TCW, for example. It's obvious that each one of us fills a role of certain reasoning behind the students. And that's why they'll gravitate to us in different ways, right? We're fulfilling a role or a need that they're having. And I've noticed that for a lot of, like, say, the younger men. I don't know what it is that I'm feeling, but there's this little thing that I'm giving them, that I'm giving them something, right? And if I had a female student who I thought I was fulfilling a father role for, I don't think I would see it as any different. And I get it. You're working within your boundaries. I'm just saying I have a different perspective of it.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is too, Art, is because you are definitely somebody who gives a lot of yourself. I'm a little more selective. So I know I'm helping these people and I'm giving it to them. I'm used to giving it in an element that I still have some in reserve for my family. But I think that's part of our I don't want to say part of our jobs, but it's become part of our jobs. And I find it's interesting. I was just curious. I mean, I'm not, there's no good or bad. I was definitely curious about why it felt that way to you.
Yeah. I don't really know. I haven't really thought about that, but I don't know.
So, I mean, how do you go about, do you just sign people up differently now? I mean, or is it?
No, but I've tailored the program slightly different so that, but it's still the same. They still get the same information.
Right.
I just have tailored it or guided it differently to not, I won't say not allow that, but the questions are geared to still get information, but still keep myself safe and keep myself with boundaries. Put some boundaries up with certain things. Yeah, it's. I will say that was the first go around. It got better. The second round, the third round was even better. But
there's a guy that watches the podcast that wants me to talk to him because he's like, hey, you have a calm way of this thing. I want to know more about that. Right. So I think people are seeking things, and if they think we have those things, then they become maybe at low levels curious, at higher levels, pulled in because they need it. But I think that's where some of, when you say love, like when I say acts of service and quality time, I share love by sharing things like that. You know what I mean? So to me, it's an emotion that is positive to me if somebody seeks that from me, as opposed to maybe, putting more of myself out there than I feel like maybe I have, or that it's I want to share it back this way. I think to me, that is how I express it.
Yeah.
Is in things like that.
All right. Well, we've reached the end of the podcast. And for the listeners out there, Todd and I are planning on having a live podcast. We don't have a date set yet, but what we would like is we want to help you, the listener, out. So if you're struggling with something with your dog, we want to see videos of it. And then we want to invite you to do a live virtual session with both Todd and myself on helping you out on what we would do to help you out. So if you're struggling with reactivity, or you're struggling with nervousness, or whatever it is that you're struggling with, we want to see these videos. So if you can email us at dogpsychologypodcast@gmail.com. You can also send the videos on Instagram if you want. They have to be less than a minute. But if it's, let's say it's 5 minutes, we'll figure out a way how to get these videos to us, and we'll share them with the viewers, and we'll share them obviously with you. And we want to be able to help you out. We think it'd be a good opportunity for you to see how different and the same Todd and I will approach the same dog. And so I think it'll be a really good opportunity for you, the listener, to see how we even, the questions that we ask the dog owner, that there's the struggling dog owner. So again,
because we'll meet in the middle, no matter what, no matter how we approach it, we're going to come to a conclusion I bet we can equally agree on. And, we share the same religion essentially, which is, the way this approach is. So that'll be interesting. Yeah. I'd love to see some videos and do an appointment for somebody.
Cool. It'll be a lot of fun too.
Yeah.
So like I said, if we do, or when we broadcast it, it'll probably be like YouTube Live, but it'll still be recorded. So those of you that can't attend live, you'll just be able to watch the recording of it.
Awesome. Look forward to it.
Thanks, Todd. And we'll see you next week.
All right, brother. Take care.